Good evening. This is the October 13th, 2021 Citizens Bond Oversight Committee meeting of the Peralta Community College District. And staff, could you make the roll call, please?
Chair Andrea Dawson,
Here.
Marcus Crawley,
Here.
Youssef Herbert, Patricia Ellis,
Present.
Benjamin Scott. Okay, you do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. So the first item of the agenda, or number 2, is approve the June 9th, 2021 meeting minutes. And
Andrea,
yes, Mr. Crowley, Marcus.
isn't it typical to first approve the agenda before approving going on to something else?
It can be, or in the opposite. I think it can be either way. If you'd like it to be first, and tell me the reason why you'd like it to be first.
Well, it seems that the first thing we should do is agree upon what we're doing here. And we haven't done that yet. You're just proceeding to go through the agenda without us agreeing that there is an agenda. It seems that typically, in my experience, the second item after roll call is a action item called approve the agenda. And we all vote on that, and for the most part, it passes with agreement, and then we proceed on with the agenda. Do I have some kind of strange notion here?
No, I think you have it right, but I'm not sure if it should go before or after the meeting minutes, because you were correct. We asked before public comment if there's any if there's approval or modifications to the agenda, and at that time we would move an agenda item up. So I think your point is well taken. Okay.
Okay, so then in the future, I think that we should have the item number 2, approve the agenda as an action item.
Okay.
So what you're suggesting is that we approve the minutes of a previous meeting, and then we are going to approve the agenda for this meeting, or are we just going to skip it all together?
No, I think we can do that before public comment.
Yeah, okay, well, I don't see it on this agenda
I
as an
appreciate
agenda
what you're
number
saying.
2 or 3 that we would approve the agenda.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I don't think it changes the context of the meeting, so I think we can still do that. And in the future, we should have it as a standing item. I agree with you that we should have it as an approve or modification to the agenda.
Okay,
Okay.
Chair Dawson, can I ask for a clarification, please?
Sure. Yeah.
Because different organizations do it very differently. Sometimes they approve an agenda and others go with it. Is that something that you're now saying you want as part of your standard operating procedure? And is that something that needs to be documented in your bylaws or your operational procedures?
That's a good question. That is something that we could talk about in new business, I guess, is re-looking at our bylaws and seeing if there's anything that we would like to make changes to the bylaws and that we recommend them. But I think if I'm not mistaken, those bylaws can be approved by us, but they still have to be accepted by the board. Now, I could be incorrect about that, but I believe that they have to be in line with the Brown Act and with the board policy on the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee.
I'm thinking more of whether you have documented sort of standard operating procedures for how you conduct the business of the board. And it may or may not rise to the level of a bylaw amendment, but just being clear on what your protocols will be.
Well, that's what that's what I was suggesting, is this, it become a standing item in the
Okay.
agenda.
All right, great.
That's what I'm recommending, and I think Marcus probably would agree with that. And we could take that as an action item, and there's 3 of us, and we could vote on that and say from now on it's going to be a standing item. Would we like to do that?
That sounds like a good idea, Andrea, that we should have a standing agenda item number 2 of, first off, an action item called approve the agenda.
Okay, approve it, and then under it, at this time, you can make modifications to the agenda. And by modifications, I mean you move something forward.
Yeah, I don't know that we can make changes to the agenda and still be compliant with the Brown Act. I think that the agenda is what we published, and that it is what we need to stick with.
I agree with you, Marcus. Modification mean what I said, and move something up in the agenda. So in other words, if AECom said that they had to leave at 6:30, then they would make that request to move them up in our presentation. That way we would get that item still taken care of at the meeting. We wouldn't be changing any of the context of the meeting. We would only be changing the order that we heard things in. And that's standard practice for school boards and citizens bond oversights to do that, so that they can cover the items of the meeting. So you're welcome to look into it further, but let's take a vote and just agree that we're going to have a standing item. Okay.
Okay,
So roll call, please, Kathy Neal.
Do the roll call again.
Oh, you know what? I am sorry. I'm sorry. You're proposing this, Marcus. So will you propose it, and I will second, and we'll take a vote.
okay, I propose that we have a standing agenda item number 2 called a action item, whereby we vote to approve the agenda of the meeting.
Okay.
That's what I move. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay, then shall we vote?
Kathy Neal, roll call, please.
Chair Dawson,
Yes.
Mr. Crawley,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion
Thank you.
passes.
All right. So now we will move on to the minutes of June 9th. And I will also see that Mr. Herbert is also joining us. It looks like.
Okay, I'd like to say something about the existing item number 2, approve the minutes from June 9th. I don't think we can approve the minutes from June the 9th, because I don't see that they've ever been done. They've not been published. They were not they were not an attachment to this. As far as we know, the minutes from the meeting almost 4 months ago, we still don't know what they are.
And I concur with you. Marcus Crowley, I concur. So we do not have the agenda, those minutes posted, so there's nothing to vote on.
Right,
And so-
and I'd like to say one other thing, Andrea, if I may, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. The district that is generating the minutes, a few days before the upcoming meeting just does not work. I think that the minutes should be generated approximately 1 week after the meeting so that we can look at them while it's still fresh on our minds. And so we've never had this discussion, and we've only had district generated meeting minutes a few days before, months later at our next meeting. That is not a good practice.
I would agree with you, and I would ask staff if that is something that they can accommodate. I suppose that question is to Kathy Neal.
Sure, yeah, since I've not been involved in generating them before, I'm not, I don't see any reason why we probably could not do that.
Okay, well, let's try that for next meeting, and that would mean that we would, reasonably speaking, get the meeting minutes by the end of next week.
So Andrea, if I may speak here, what I'm requesting is that the minutes from June 9th and the minutes from this meeting be generated within the next week. And, it takes no longer to generate the minutes promptly than it does many weeks later. In fact, it's probably easier because it is fresh on the mind of the administration staff that is doing that. So let's make it easier on both of us and just do the minutes promptly.
Does that seem agreeable to you, Kathy Neal?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I think at this point you'll have to go back to the recording of the June meeting
I'll touch base with Mark and
to generate those
right.
meeting minutes, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So at this time, it says public comment, and public comment, I have an opinion on putting public comment at this item here. Generally speaking, public comment is after each item, and I will call for public comment after each item. And then it is at the end of the meeting, and it's public comment on any item that was not discussed in this meeting. So there's two public comments. One that's related to what actually is in each item, and then one at the end, which is on other items that might be of consideration for CBOC. Does anyone else have thoughts on that, committee members?
Yes, Andrea, I'd like to speak about that. And there is public comment to our committee about anything that is not on the agenda. The public comment that is allowed on each agenda item is a public comment about that agenda item. So those are two different sources of that invites public comment. I like the concept of making it easy for the public to engage with us. And I think it is abuse of discretion to make the public wait till the end of the meeting in order to make a public comment. I think that we should embrace public comments And I like the public comment right here at near the beginning. In this particular case, it's agenda item number 3. In the future, it'll be agenda item number 4. And that's why I think it should continue to be at the beginning of near the beginning of the agenda.
So understanding your thoughts, I would like to ask if, I'm not sure, if Yusuf, have you connected? Are you with us, Yusuf? I know Patricia is. So if either one of you have a comment on this, this item regarding public comments to our committee. Well, hearing none, then if you'd like to make the proposal that public comment stays at, which will now be item 4 instead of item 3, Marcus, you can make that, and I will second it with the, but I would like it to say public comment on non-agenda items.
That's fine, Andrea. I'll be happy to do that. So I move that public comments in the future be agenda item number 4. And there be a note that the public comments are invited for non-agenda items.
Okay, I will second that. And roll call, please, Kathy Neal. Vote
Chair Dawson,
yes.
Mr. Crawley,
Yes, I'm listening.
Mr. Herbert. It looks like he's having some connection difficulties. Ms. Ellis?
Did we just lose her too?
Oh, no.
I'm not seeing her on the screen.
Yeah, I'm not either.
So I'm hoping that Mr. Herbert can find his connection, and so can Patricia Ellis. And if not, I'm hoping that she can call in. I'm gonna look right now and call her because she could call in and continue the meeting.
It seems to me that we do not have a quorum right now if
No, you
the
don't.
members are
You
not available.
No.
We do not have a quorum. So we're putting a pause on the meeting for a minute. Patricia had a good connection and now she does not, it appears, right? I'm looking for, oh, she. There, Patricia's, there you go. All right. Yusuf and Patricia, we took a pause and we were about to vote on public comment, adding it as a standing agenda item as item 4. And so Marcus Crowley made the proposal, so I'll let him make it again, and then we'll take a formal roll call vote on it.
Okay, I move that agenda item number 4 in the future be standing agenda item number 4 for public comments, and that there be an asterisk or some type of note saying that the public comments are directed to non-agenda items.
I second that proposal. So Kathy Neal,
Shall we
roll
try
call,
the
please.
roll call again?
Yes,
All right, Chair Dawson,
yes,
and Mr. Crawley,
Yes,
Mr. Herbert. Looks like you're on now. No? Ms. Ellis,
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm hearing yes. My vote is yes.
And Ms.
And
Ellis?
Patricia Ellis is yes.
Okay,
Great.
the ayes have it.
Okay, good. Okay, so now I will ask for public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak?
I'd like to point out that the public comments could be invited for anybody here, including the CBOC members, if we wanted to speak to something that's not on the agenda. I just wanted to say that that is my understanding of it.
I've never thought about that, but that is an interesting thought, because I thought that belonged more under new business, but that's our opportunity to bring up items that might not be on the agenda that we would like discussed. So do we
Okay.
want to?
So I just wanted to say that's my thought. And I don't know that we have to vote on it or take the conversation any farther than that, unless somebody has a comment they want to make.
Okay, so let's move on from that, and we can talk about it, or mull it over, and if folks have thoughts on that, they can email them to me, and we'll bring it back to the next meeting, I guess. Okay,
Okay,
all right. So we are on to item 4, which is the bond status and program spending update from AECom. And I believe we have at least one AECom representative here this evening.
I would like to say something before we start this.
Okay,
And that is for now that I'm more familiar with the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee and our mission and the previous bond and status program updates, I think that we are spinning our wheels getting these lengthy updates. The CBOC, our mission is not to understand all of the future charts and schedules and renderings and plans and all of this. Our job is to report to the public on expenditures, past expenditures. And as far as the future goes, our job is to and give advice on cost-saving measures. And all in the past, these presentations on construction has never invited us to give opinions about cost-saving measures. So basically, it is we are diverting the purpose of our CBOC member meeting into being educated about the future, and that's not our purpose. So I'd like to say that, and in the future, so that we're not totally ignorant of what's coming up. If they could keep it down to about 5 minutes or so, then we could be informed about the future without having a substantial part of our meeting dedicated to something that I consider off purpose. Now, we are supposed to suggest cost-saving measures. And I think that one cost-saving measure would be if the well-paid staff of the facilities people keep their message to 5 minutes rather than, and we don't even need to be updated every meeting. So let's economize that way and allow our CBOC meeting to spend a lot more quality time on examining past expenditures.
Well, I agree with
And I
you.
want to say one more thing,
Okay.
and I might have this wrong. And so I do invite anybody to speak up and correct my thinking. And then I'll mull it over and probably have a better idea next time if somebody can correct my thinking. Thank you.
Okay, so I have Patricia or Yusuf, do you have any thoughts on this, what Mr. Crowley has proposed? Can you hear us, Patricia and Yusuf?
Yes, I can.
So do you have any particular thoughts on this?
I do not.
Okay, Mr. Herbert? Yusuf?
I do not even.
Okay, so I have a little bit different view. I guess I feel like I would like the financial reports and what I call the cut and dry financial reports, and that is what the original allocation was, what's been expended to date, and what's projected to complete. 3 columns. But as far as the presentation, I do think it's of value. I do want to know what is happening in the program, because I feel like in our look back to adequately ask questions and have an opinion if there could be some more prudent ways to save costs, or even just ask the questions of what the district is doing. We have to understand the program that's in front of us. It can't just be about numbers. So I really do, and especially in particular that we're not taking any site visits, but site visits and a program status update, spending, and which is what it says here, status and program spending. So it's, once again, it's the original allocation, it's what's been spent to date and what's projected to complete. So that's where you'll see the big changes, or if there's going to be a deviation from the program and the district determines they're going to take a project offline and introduce another one for what might be a very good reason, or we might think it's not such a good reason, and start asking a lot of questions. So I really don't feel like this is for naught to spend 20 minutes getting a bond program status update. And I'd like to move forward and go ahead with this tonight and let Patricia and Yusuf, and hopefully Benjamin Scott will play the tape, and then folks can have some more thought about what their opinion on this is. But I would like to go ahead with number 4 and not have too much more discussion back and forth about whether it's a good idea or not.
I'd like to respond to you if I may.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Crowley.
Okay. So I'm not saying that we should be ignorant of what the facilities team is doing in the future. But we have been presented with charts and graphs and things like that that show, okay, so here is the progress, and we're putting it out for, we've finished the plans by this time, we're putting it out for bid. We have identified the subcontractors. We have right here on the chart when the job is going to get started, and various steps along the way. We don't need to know all of that. We know, if we understand what the project is, and we understand it good enough to say that, yes, that is in compliance with the voter-approved projects, as not a deviation from facility program, that's what we have to, we are supposed to do and understand that. We really don't need to have updates on if once we have a picture of what the building's going to look like, we don't have to have more pictures of what the building's going to look like. So I say that let's cut this this update to the bare minimum. And I'm not saying that we get rid of it. I'm saying that let's cut it to the bare minimum and save costs and allow more time for our CBOC identified purpose.
Okay, well, you made your point in the beginning, and I told you what I felt, and you have reiterated your point for folks and the rest of the committee to think about. So let's go ahead with item 4 now. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So Keith, now Kajaya, is that right? Kajia?
Yeah.
Kajia. Second time I got it, Kajia. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
I'm also joined with David Olson from Baxter McCarley Berry and Company. So I don't know if Dave, if you had a comment on the dialogue that they were just having. I saw your hand was raised, but
okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. I thought you were just all right. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh no, I was going to make a couple of comments as the that it might make sense to bring to the next board meeting. Again, I know we've done that before, but a review of the CBOC's legal responsibilities and the ed code section that authorizes it, which does mention some permitted activities outside its legal authorities. And I'd also encourage the committee and to think of itself more broadly as a liaison between the public and the public's interest and the bond program. So I think in my experience, CBOCs have been fairly effective at communicating to the public. There are different, different segments of the public that are required to be represented on the CBOC, and I think the purpose of that broadly is that you're the liaison between the ongoing bond program and the public. Specifically to review expenditures and to make sure no expenditures are made on non-permitted uses, but more broadly to be able to respond to a public question of what's going on with the bond program.
I appreciate that input. Thank you. So we will move now to have Keith do the presentation.
okay. It says I cannot share while someone else is sharing.
Oh, well, yeah, I will stop sharing. How's that?
Are you seeing my presentation?
Yep.
Here we go. Yes.
Okay, and not in a strange window. It looks different to me for some reason.
It looks good.
Okay, I'll try to fly through this a little quicker because we do have some highlights that we want to focus on in our presentation today. Here's kind of where we are overall with the capital program. I presented at the last Board of Trustees meeting to give them a status as well. 50 major projects underway, 56 infrastructure packages that are underway as well. I don't think I've spoken much to those in the past. In some of the presentations, we've largely focused on the 15 major capital projects. We've committed $129 million to contracts. And of the $115 million of bonds that have been issued, we spent about 51 million of those dollars. One of the things we've always focused on are the state funded projects, because that's us shepherding and leveraging the local bond dollars by securing state matching funds. This is the status of $77 million we're receiving from the state. And you can see from this chart here that 5 of those projects are in DSA, so they're pretty far along in the process, somewhere in the very final stages of DSA. And 1 project is just starting starting design. That's this phase 2 aviation complex.
What does DSA stand for?
The Division of the State Architect. It's the agency that oversees our construction plans for compliance with state codes related to educational facilities.
Thank you.
Yep. Here's a snapshot of the costs for the $115 million of bonds sold. Of the $51 million, how they've been allocated and spent between Measure A and Measure G for each college campus and the district-wide expenditures. You can see that we spent 51 million of the 115 million. So one of the things that we're working on with Dave Olson and the financial team is timing the next issuance of the next series of bonds for Measure G. This is kind of our program cash flow of how we're spending the money. You can see here, this is the current quarter highlighted by the green arrow. You can see there's an exponential ramp now as we start to move forward into 2022 moving forward. That's a reflection of these projects that are coming out of the Division of the State Architects Review. So they'll be going into bidding either at the end of this year, early next year. So we anticipate really ramping up our spending as our projects will now move from this pre-construction phase, right, from design planning, DSA approval to actually a construction phase. So you'll really start to see the transformation of the campuses throughout the district with construction starting in earnest, starting in 2022. Then I'm going to turn it over to Dave for a few slides on kind of the financials of the program from the financial advisory section.
Okay, thank you, Keith. So what I want to talk about in the next section is some of the work that we're doing on the finance side to plan the program and move it into the future. I mentioned 4 things on this slide. We want to make sure we can track expenditures because that's going to drive the timing of bond issuances. At this point, we are drawing down on funds and we're moving forward to a much faster pace of expenditure. So we are planning for the upcoming bond issue and all the steps that need to take place as we move into that. We are managing ongoing obligations, both under state law and under federal tax law, federal securities law. I want to let you know where we are on that. The last thing we want to do is to have a problem with compliance issues. And then I want to discuss some of the work we're doing to communicate a positive message around the program. So if we hit the next slide, the tracking expenditures, we go back a number of years here, and you can see that as the district kind of wound down Measure A, we were spending money pretty slowly, 10, 20, 30, $40 million a year. And what we're gearing up to is a program that's going to spend $120 million a year, or maybe even more. If you went back and looked at the bars on Keith's chart in 22, 23, 24, we're spending more than 120 million. We want to see that prove out before we build that into our planning. But we have been spending money relatively slowly compared to the pace of expenditures coming up. So moving from a program that's spending $2 to $4 million a month during the planning stage to a program that's spending $10 million a month as we move forward. And obviously the $10 million a month pace, if we're saying that we have $60 million left now, spent 50 million out of 115. We're going to have 50 million or so left by the end of the year, but gearing up at $10 million per month, we're going to want to start planning the next bond issue, which we talk about on the next slide. So the upcoming bond issue, the concept of the program is that we have a lot of needs and that we are going to get authorizations as we need it, and then issue bonds to fund every couple of years worth of projects, every 2 or 3 years projects, maybe a little bit. We will downsize the issues a little bit from there if they become larger than that. But we basically trying to borrow money every other year to fund the next 2 or 3 years worth of expenditures. We estimate January 1 to have a balance of approximately 62 million, and I'm thinking it could be a little bit less, and a burn rate that's expected to grow to $10 million per month by next spring, as Keith is and his team is breaking ground on some of these projects that we're planning has been underway. We're doing that a little bit, but we're going to really be doing that. A lot of projects breaking ground in the spring. And assuming that the interest rates remain low, rates are pretty low now. I'll show that on the next chart. That we might do a refunding bond at the same time. So we'll issue some bonds to pay off some old bonds and save taxpayers some money. This next slide shows you that we're in a low interest rate environment. We look over the past 30 years, and obviously the past 10 or 15 of those years have been relatively low, and the past 3 or 4 years have been extremely low. So during periods of low interest rates, we want to be a little bit more aggressive in the size of the bond issues. And as we're doing bond issues, we want to look at opportunities to refund existing bond issues so that we can save on staff time and costs of issuance. Next slide. I said we're also looking at these ongoing obligations. Probably the most recent thing that has happened with, I'm going to mention another thing that's happened more recently than that, but this during the summer and early fall, the county calculates the size of the district's tax base and the tax rate that needs to be levied in order to repay the bonds. This last year, the tax base of the district grew at 5.5%. That's great news. We build the program around the idea that we might grow at 4%. We have a lot of off ramps if we don't grow at that rate. We don't commit to 4% escalation in repayments, but we plan on 4% growth over time. So 5.5 in the rearview mirror. That's great. The bond tax rate is $40.70 per $100,000, or that's the rate for tax bills that are going out now. That's a little bit lower than we've been recently, so that's good news as well. The second thing I want to mention is that we're talking to the rating agencies. That used to be meet with the rating agencies at the time of bond issuance only. Now, given the growing size of the program and some of the concerns raised by the accreditation process, the negative stories in the newspaper, we're having rating agencies ask to meet with us on a regular basis. So I see a deal is in the meeting, if you're still here, that we will have a meeting we have another call with representative from Moody's Investor Service tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock on a surveillance call. We've gotten notice from Fitch Ratings that they want to talk with us over the next couple of weeks. So managing the ratings is something that we're doing. And we also continue to look at the use of bond proceeds, arbitrage, rebate, continuing disclosure. There are a lot of obligations that we need to meet as we move forward, and I'm happy to go into more detail if anybody cares to do so. But the main thing is making sure that we can move the program ahead at the pace we want, at the cost we told taxpayers it would be. At this point, we look to be doing that. Next slide. In terms of communicating the long-term vision, I always go back to the 2018 facility needs assessment that recognized $2 billion worth of existing need, not taking into account emerging needs, ongoing maintenance, other needs that evolve. What that told us at that time was that the needs were going to exceed the resources of the district, and that we ought to start with what's an affordable pacing for the program and go from there. So we built this first bond measure as kind of a phase one at $800 million, knowing that we would want to have future bond authorization bond measures on the ballot moving forward, and that over the course of that 20-year period from the first bond election, Measure G, through 2037, 38, we'd probably be spending money on average at a pace of about $100 million per year. So if we're running a program that's going to count on ongoing support from the taxpayers, we want to make sure that they recognize the positive impact that we want to deliver good results, and we want to make sure that that we communicate those good results as we get facilities in the ground, on budget, and at a taxpayer cost that we promise. So those are the things we're keeping our eye on as we're moving forward, tracking the expenditures, getting the next bond program underway, taking care of the ongoing responsibilities, and trying to communicate, trying to deliver positive results and communicate a positive message.
Okay,
That's
thank
all
you.
I have, Keith.
Okay, I'll just quickly step through some of the schedules.
I have a question for
Yeah.
Dave. Okay, Dave, so on Measure G, which is the newer bond measure, the district has only sold a Series A, Series A bond, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and what rate did the investors of that bond, what rate are they paying?
I can communicate back a, kind of a blended rate to staff and get it back to you through that method, but it's somewhere around 3.25%.
I see.
And we'll be able to borrow at this time at a little bit lower than that.
Is that a single transaction, or is the series sold in a number of transactions?
The series was sold in a single transaction, but a series of bonds is the way to think of it as a collection of loans, and there are different loans that have, some investors are buying bonds that have a 30-year term on them, some with a 20-year term, some at a 10-year term. So when we blend those all together, when we report the rate, which is a blended rate of around 3.25.
So the Series A of this bond, you say that is a number of transactions rather than a single transaction?
It's a single, I would describe it as a single transaction that has a number of components. So there's the investments are all securitized into different loans from different parties, but it's a single transaction, happens at one point in time, and the money's delivered at one point in time. Is that answering your question?
It comes from
Yes.
numerous investors,
Yeah.
Marcus. It comes from more than one investor.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to get Dave to bring me to understanding, not you, Andrea.
Well, it's an easy way to explain it for
Okay.
us lay people.
Okay, well, thank you, Dave. You answered my question. And so approximately 3.5%.
Yeah, maybe a little bit lower than that, but it's that's the first $50 million out of this $800 million authorization. And when we talk about bringing it in at the cost that we represented to taxpayers at the time of the election, what we built into our bond analysis at that point was that the bond issues would be sold at a 5.25% rate. So every bond issue that we get sold at less than the 5.25% rate builds more flexibility into the program and allows us to deliver it either at lower cost or faster, at a faster pace.
Okay, and presently aren't treasury bonds selling for about 1.5%?
Yeah, treasury bonds are at a very, very low rate. I think the interest rate chart that you saw had showed the 10-year treasury, which is kind of the benchmark. Treasuries also go across the board, and the rate is currently around 1.5% on the 10-year treasury.
So why do our bonds cost 3.5% when they're securitized by all of our properties, and the treasury bonds are almost half of that?
The treasury bond market has an advantage that two advantages that we don't have. And one of them is that they're very, very liquid. So investors from all around the world can buy them and trade in them as if they're cash. Our bonds are relatively liquid, but there's you don't have as many buyers. It's not as deep a buyer base. And the second thing is there's a credit risk in our securities that is not that is higher than than for the US Treasury.
Okay, thank you.
So can I ask one more question on the money part? So has the district and does the district enter into doing refunding of bonds sometimes?
Yes, the district has refunded bonds on a number of occasions, including a year and a half ago. And our strategy has been to look at, because it's transactions costs have a fair amount of upfront cost of issuance. And because the district is going to be issuing bonds on a regular basis, once every year and a half, 2 years, 2.5 years, on a fairly frequently, the strategy has been to look at refunding opportunities at the time we're doing a new money bond transaction. So we need to replenish, put some more money in the bank to do facility projects early in next year, January or February likely. And so at that point in time now is when we're looking at refunding opportunities. We expect there to be some bonds that were sold in 2011, I believe, that are going to be a good refunding opportunity to save some money. But we look at that each time we sell bonds.
Okay, and so just to ask that or express that one more time. So in doing that, when you're doing the new issuances and doing the refunding at the same time, so is there some savings in as far as in the consulting service?
Yeah, so the cost you pay, it's one time through the approval process. So my fee, the bond counsel fee, is reduced. It's one time through the rating process, so the rating fee is reduced. It's one time through the underwriting process. The underwriting fees are reduced somewhat, not as much as the other fees, but in general, when you do two transactions at the same time, the second one costs about half of what the first one costs.
Thank you. So it's a cost saving measure too. So
Yes, it is.
timing is everything. So thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
Okay, Dave was popular today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You were popular today.
I'll just fly through the schedules here. And again, we do this because just to give you a highlight of where the projects are and how they're progressing. What I've done here is indicated 2 arrows. One, the green one is the last time I presented schedule status actually to you was back in I think it was our April meeting. So that's kind of the status that I presented back then. And the blue bar shows the progress that's since been made. You can see here that projects are moving into DSA approval, the division of the state architect. So right after that is when we're going into a bid award cycle. So you can see the auto and diesel technologies project, which is a state funded project as well, is just about to come out of DSA. So this is kind of that new ramp of projects that we expect to go moving into construction early next year. This is Berkeley City College, the new building at Berkeley City College. This is moving forward pretty well. It's in its schematic design phase, nearing its end of its schematic design phase. This is a design build project, one of the largest projects in the capital program. It's a $65 million design build package that's moving forward right on schedule at this point in time. This is an interior of the new Learning Resource Center, state funded project for Laney College. You can see here a lot of progress being made on the Laney projects with the locker room modernization moving forward all the way into DSA. In fact, all their projects are now in DSA for review. So this is part of that big influx of projects that we expect to be under construction early next year. And this is the Child Development Center for Merritt College campus. It has 2 major projects that have state matching funding tied to them. And again, they're also in DSA. So this is all a part of that example of where we're moving into bidding and awarding later this year. You'll see likely many of these bars now or arrows into the bid and award cycle. And certainly early next year, as we have our meetings, we'll be under construction. One of the projects that we're moving forward as well is this Science Allied Health TI build out. We've actually changed the delivery model of this. I'll be taking this back to the board for a revision on our approach. This was originally designated as a design build project, where we again combined the designer and the architect into one contract. There's two scopes of work at this project, so we've decided it's more beneficial to actually split that. So it's going to be delivered through traditional delivery. So I'll be taking that resolution back to the board to change the delivery of that project to traditional delivery. And finally, kind of evolution of the program. The last board meeting, the Board of Trustees approved the 5-year capital outlay, the 5-year construction plan submittal to the State Chancellor's Office for future state funding. There's good momentum building at the statewide level for next year, in November of next year, for a $12 billion bond measure to be placed on the ballot for K through 14 education matching funding. So this is why it's important for the district to line up its project proposals to the State Chancellor's Office to, again, continue to leverage any state monies that are available to maximize our local bond funds. Our next step here for the bond program is to look at that bond spending plan, which defines all of our projects that are in the capital program, and do a kind of a realignment to the 5-year capital outlay that was approved by the Board of Trustees. There's been some revisions in some of the projects and priorities that have been established through that process. We're also working with the Chancellor and with the Vice Chancellor of DGS to look at upcoming revisions to the district-wide facilities technology master plan. That's in line with the educational master plans for the colleges and the district's overall strategic plan. So a number of plan revisions. You can see that we're still working off the 2017 facilities technology master plan. So it's up in time for a revision. So as we make those revisions, that'll also dictate kind of the bond spending moving forward. But at this point in time, those 15 capital projects that are moving forward were all part of the current bond spending plan and were designated as high priorities through the shared governance process that we went through when we first came on board. And with that, that's our presentation for this evening. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay. So thoughts or comments on this presentation? Marcus, Crowley, do you have any thoughts or comments?
Well, my only comment there is what kind of savings can there be from your program? That is our purpose, or that is the purpose that we are given. And we're supposed to bring that up and consider it. So where are the savings to be found in the future program?
It's certainly something that we've always got on our mind, right? How do we maximize efficiency and savings throughout the capital program? One of the things that we're looking at right now is through our sustainability side is looking at what we call an energy service company approach to some of the infrastructure projects. You saw in my presentation just now is referencing the infrastructure packages, the 56 infrastructure packages that are moving forward. Those are largely mechanical, electrical, plumbing types of repairs to the basic kind of foundations of the campuses. You know, some of the main trunk lines and pipelines servicing the buildings, the electrical grid for the buildings. We're in discussions with Pacific Gas and Electric to look at the concept of an energy service company approach to those. This is where PG&E kind of bundles a package of services to come out and do an assessment broadly across the entire district to provide recommendations to us on how to most effectively optimize the spend of capital funds to execute those repairs, in addition to making the projects frankly more sustainable, right? So that there's a life cycle cost savings to the district as well moving forward. And so that's a concept that we're in discussions with PG&E right now. We're planning to present that to the board at one of these upcoming meetings as part of our sustainability presentation on the district's overall sustainability plan. And actually PG&E will be in our presentation with us as well. So we'd be happy to maybe in a future meeting, Mr. Crawley, bring that to this committee as well so you can understand how that might optimize the savings on the capital side for the bond program and the bond dollars.
Well, thank you. I've got another question, and that is, you referred to repairs. And so I assume that only capital improvements are done in repairs. And so how do you determine what is a capital improvement repair and what is just deferred maintenance repair?
Sure. Great question. It's something that we work on closely with Dave and with bond counsel. If we look at, although we may categorize these things as repairs, they're basically full replacements of equipment and systems, right? A repair to us is changing a filter or changing a little piece of pipe that's broken or something like that. It's not a systemic repair overall, where we're actually replacing entire chillers or entire systems that are broken and cannot be frankly repaired anymore. It's frankly a replacement of the equipment that's in there or the systems that are operating the buildings.
So is there some length of years that the repair is supposed to give good service that dictates whether it's a capital repair or a non-capital repair?
I don't know if there's a guideline. I don't know if, Dave, you have any input on that. We probably have bond counsel kind of response if there's any guideline related to what's the definition of how the length of a repair to be considered a repair versus a capital improvement.
So,
Yeah.
Keith and everyone, wouldn't it depend what you're actually repairing? In other words, if it's a boiler or if it's an air conditioning system, if it's a refrigeration system for the kitchen, there's different warranties and life cycles on different products, including a sidewalk. I mean, or a wooden structure versus a concrete. So I think it's it comes back to district standards and what's in the industry as far as warranties expected.
Well, I think we look at those more from a systemic approach, right? If it's a system repair, so that there's a piece of equipment that's just broken, then and it needs replacement, then it's a bond eligible expense, right? That we're just going to replace an entire piece of equipment. If it's a series of pipes that are leaking, those are routine maintenance repairs. And we've created a list of all these items, and we've segregated them into what we consider to be these repairs that are not these systemic things, but these things that just need to be fixed because something's leaking or a light switch doesn't work, or right, that kind of thing, versus the total system is failing, like a whole piece of a switch gear for an electrical box or something, right? That just needs to be entirely replaced.
Well, thank you. You've answered my question.
Marcus, if you don't mind, I'd like to add a little bit to that because we fund projects with various useful lives in the program, and one of the things we're required to represent when we sell bonds is that the bonds being sold don't have a maturity that's beyond the useful life of the projects being funded. But getting back to the question you asked earlier, a bond issue is a collection of loans. So if we were to be funding projects that might have a useful life of a shorter period of time of 5 to 10 years, we'd want to make sure that we have enough bonds maturing in the first 10 years to pay for those. We'd never want to pay for a facility improvement that's only going to last 10 years with bonds that are lasting 30 years. So we're careful to make those representations.
Oh, thank you. That explains it. I appreciate that clarification.
So getting back to, I thank you for the presentation, and getting back to the presentation. Once again, I do like the presentations, and what I'd actually like to see in the future. I like the conciseness of this presentation, but for instance, just going back to, say, College of Alameda. If somehow on that slide, it could show the square footage of the improvement, like a paragraph of what the project is, and then what the allocation is to that project. And if it changes over time, then that delta shows. So I think that would, for me, go a long ways of tracking projects. And the reason I bring something up like this, because I understand that Mr. Crowley and I might have a different way of looking at viewing these projects and being liaisons to the public, which I do think we are. The good news and the bad news and as I say. But in other words, if College of Alameda, if what the description was and then the cost was, it's 100,000 square foot building and it's costing $150 million, I can equate what that is to square footage. And so, to me, it's of interest that what are we spending on a building? Because where cost savings come is watching, having a good oversight and understanding in the planning and assessment and design phase of what the architect is intending to provide to be built by the contractor. And it's helpful for, I think, us to know and the public to know what it's costing, because there have been cases in other districts where buildings were cost 3 times maybe what they should. And I think of one in Los Angeles Unified School District years ago where they spent $100 million on planning and trying to get in the ground to do a project on a toxic site, and they ended up having to shelve the whole thing and go somewhere else in LA Unified. I think this was about 20 years ago. But that's the kind of stuff that you can at least have some sense of what's going on if you understand the size of the project and the scope and the cost, and then follow it through the timeline. What's a reasonable time to build out the College of Alameda project? Because if it should be a 3-year project by industry standards, and it turns out to be a 7-year project, time is money. And so there's something wrong. So I think these presentations are of value, and I'd just like to see just a little bit more with them. And they don't have to be longer, and we might not even discuss that cost, but at least we can see what that scope is.
And I think I can in the future kind of gear our presentations more for you to see these types of metrics related to how the projects are being baselined and how they're performing from period to period, right?
Yeah, I think that's very valuable.
Because we are seeing like heavy escalation over this COVID period, right? We've seen a spike in the Bay Area of roughly 14% in escalation.
For sure.
As many of our budgets had assumed a 5% escalation factor in them. It's something we're continuing to monitor, but it's certainly a whole presentation topic I can make to
I know.
Right, to show what the impact of escalation is. But I think to your point that certainly to gear our presentations more to those metrics so you can see how the program's performing against kind of our baseline standards, and certainly your own experiences as well, right, of what you've seen elsewhere. But it is something that we are tracking, so I'd be happy to present that in our future presentations.
Thank you. I think it would make it, these are meaningful presentations to my way of thinking, and I think it would make them more meaningful. So.
Okay.
So other comments on this item? Hearing none, we will move on to item 5, which we don't have any backup that was posted with this item. And there basically is not any bond report that's been published or worked on to date that I'm aware of, other than my very rough draft. And at one point, I think Benjamin Scott and Patricia and/or Marcus were willing to work on this, but that was when we had a larger committee, which you still would have not been a quorum, as I recall. A subcommittee, can it be 3 when we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, members, or it becomes a public meeting. So I don't believe it can. So here's my proposal, is that I'm willing to work on this again, and Marcus, if you're willing to work on it again with me, that you and I work on this, the 1920 report and get it published.
Is Patricia given up on this?
Well, she's not even in the meeting anymore, so unfortunately I can't ask her. She dropped off, but we still have a quorum because Mr. Herbert, Yusuf Herbert, is still in the meeting.
Well, I talked to Patricia about this several months ago. And at that time, she said that she was interested in the project. And I asked her if she had contacted the other fellow, I believe it was Benjamin.
Okay.
And she said that she had not. She was sort of waiting for somebody to contact her. And then I encouraged her to reach out to him and get it done. And they can probably whip it out in a couple of hours. And she said that she would. So no, I don't have the time to work on this.
Okay,
But-
so I will reach out to one of them and see if they'll help or want to do it together, okay? And it's either I will do that with Patricia or Benjamin, or the two of them will do it, and I will provide them the rough draft. Okay,
Okay,
all right, so I think we'll move on because I don't want to lose our quorum and get a committee membership update from Kathy.
Yeah, the update is basically, as you have noted a couple of times during the meeting, right now you only have 5 members. You have 2 vacancies, one of which is the student representative and the other the at-large member. What I would like to suggest is that the committee perhaps send a request to the board, first stating the fact that you're having some challenges always meeting the quorum because the positions are not fully filled, and asking that the board move forward in finding people to appoint to those positions and get them appointed.
may I ask a question here? What is the administration or the board doing to attract members? What kind of outreach do they have going on?
I think you would have to ask the board what kind of outreach they're doing. I'm not.
Well, then let me ask you,
Respond to that.
what are you doing as far as outreach to?
I'm not doing anything because I just got assigned to do the administrative support, and I have not been tasked with attempting to recruit members. And I'm not sure that's an appropriate role for me.
Can I
would-
answer that question? I can't raise my hand because I'm the host. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Mark Johnson.
Sure. Yeah. So we've just recently given a social media push to look for bond members. We're also doing a similar push for parcel tax committee members. The bond committee is in a certain respect, with 5 members, you're still a functioning committee. So our focus has been really more on parcel tax and finding people to participate in that committee. But what we are doing is pushing out through social media with paid advertising in digital outlets. We are putting ads in the newspapers soon to help get the word out.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, and I just have to go back and, I forgot to ask if there's any interested members of the public that would like to comment on the bond status and program spending update. If there are, I'm not familiar with someone that's on the screen right now, so. Are hearing none, I will go back to the agenda.
Andrea, let me ask a question here. I assume that everybody that is privy to this meeting are here on this vertical series of pictures and titles, so that if you are talking about, is there any public person that wants to say something, are you referring to somebody that is not on listed here? I mean, are there people that could be at this meeting that are not shown here? In other words, sort of phantom attendees?
No, but I saw, now we have a hand raised. It's Daryl Ford. I cannot see the rest of the name.
That is his name, Daryl Ford, and then there's
Okay,
dash FOCON.
okay. So Daryl Ford, I wasn't familiar with who that is. And so I would like to recognize you, but I did see another name on the screen that I believe was a community member, and I wasn't sure if they had dropped off or they were still on the screen with someone else. So I'm simply asking, Marcus. There's no phantom people. So,
Okay, well, I have been on other meetings where only the people that were actually invited or the CBOC member is shown, and everybody else is not even exposed, and they have to somehow or other put up their hand or do a chat or something in order to make their presence known. And I was just wondering if our committee is doing that, or whether we are giving them a opportunity to actually present themselves.
If I can speak to that, there are different types of meeting setups. Ours is set up as a public meeting for anyone who is joining the meeting to participate. I think the other kind that you were talking about is when something is set up as a webinar, which is different from a public meeting. A webinar is set up for the purposes primarily of presentation to an audience.
I am familiar with that, and I wasn't referring to a webinar. Webinar format. I was referring to a Zoom meeting format, just like we have here.
okay, so can I go back to and recognize Daryl Ford if they would still like to be recognized?
Yes, I'm looking forward to hearing him.
Good evening. Thank you for recognizing me. I guess I'm here. My name is Daryl Ford. I work with an organization called FOCON Incorporated, which is a Black-owned business located in the city of Oakland. I guess I think they've been in business for over 35 years. We were very instrumental in working to get this bond supported through the community, but you know, as a local business, we've been completely shut out of this process as far as how things are going. There's no recognizable local commitment, local participation, anything. As you look in the city of Oakland and look at the disparity study that's going on, well, that's already been published, and I'm sure Alameda County is coming with their own, and I'm sure that the figures won't be too far from the city of Oakland's. And you know, the contractor that you got to pilot this thing, you know, surely claim to want the local participation. I don't know how they can do that being a Southern California company, but you know, they've got certain people involved locally, but the businesses that actually put the boots on the ground to get this bond out and supported and passed have been neglected. And yeah, so your participation and or lack thereof is the disenchantment from local people to participate in something that they set up for other people out of town to take advantage of. So I mean,
So
that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So, if you guys were, a little bit more open, a little bit more receptive, a little bit more really transparent in getting local people to participate, it would actually happen, because there are other projects in Oakland where local participation is requested and we are participating. So yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I'll step off the podium at this time.
So thank you for your comment and for your public comment. And if you stay on towards the end of the meeting on future new business, I may have a proposal. So anyway, I'd like to go on to item 7, which is next meeting agenda recommendations.
Okay, Andrea, I've got a couple of recommendations.
Yes.
One is that next meeting, we must elect a vice chair, because if you got sick or something, we would be in disarray. So we need to identify a vice chairperson, and let's have that as an agenda item. And I have another agenda item, and that is that we need to have a subcommittee on reviewing the website and making the website our website, the CBOC's website. I volunteered to be on this subcommittee, the website subcommittee, and I would try to recruit what's her name that we were talking about a little earlier ago.
Patricia Ellis.
Yeah, Patricia. When I talked to her in the past, we seemed very compatible. But then next meeting, an agenda item would be a report from this subcommittee regarding the website recommendations.
Okay, so I believe you could reach out to Patricia and have a conversation about what your thoughts on improvements could be. And you could actually bring those to the next meeting in a format that is actually could be posted
Yes.
as an item. You can do that from this meeting to that meeting, because we're not discussing anything that.
Okay. I
Okay.
just wanted to get that down as an agenda item. And so with your blessing, I will do what I can.
Okay. So then the next thing that I would like to have as a next meeting agenda recommendation, I would like to hear about the districts, what the district is doing on the small and local business hiring and outreach to local contractors. What is actually the district's policy and what percentage of presentation on this is what I would like to propose for as a next agenda item. And in that, I would like to have staff be a part of that presentation. I really appreciate AECom's presentation, and it's no disrespect to anyone, but I would like to actually have who is either acting or is head of the bond program as far as the district liaison. So is that a reasonable request?
Yes, I think that we could use the item effectively. We have already covered this a year and a half or so ago. Keith showed that they had a program trying to encourage local contractors to apply and to have education seminars on how they could be better prepared to apply. So we did have a program. Now maybe the district has moved beyond that program, but it wouldn't hurt for us to revisit that ground and see how current it is.
If I may provide some information that might be helpful to this discussion. The Department of General Services is currently working on a fairly comprehensive small local enterprise business, otherwise known as SLEB, program that is almost fully baked, I'll put it that way, and will be going to the Board of Trustees before the end of the year for adoption. So it might be helpful to have a presentation to this committee on that program.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what we're looking for. So I appreciate that. So that is a recommendation for a topic for our next meeting.
Good.
So, and I saw Daryl Ford's hand up again. Would you like to speak or not?
I would like to speak on that program. There, with so many opportunities that are becoming available now, contractors are having to pick and choose between viable and non-viable situations. And what we're dealing with right here is a non-viable situation for a contractor, because it doesn't look like there's an end for work for me participating with this process when you start talking about the contractors that are being involved, because there's plenty of people in Oakland, contractors in Oakland, to get the job done. That is a misnomer if you can't find any. It's who's doing the looking and are they actually providing opportunities. So if you have a GC that is not from here and then they're claiming to be down with the process and not know anybody here, and they do this outreach or what have you, with all due respect, it's a dog and pony show. You can, we couldn't find anybody. Now we import our people. You got to stick to the guidelines. You have to stick to your goals. You have to make them, there's only one way, and that way. And if you don't make them, there should be sanctions involved. And when that happens, and when those things are in place and the local contractors know that there's going to be teeth to these so-called programs, they get involved. But if there's no teeth involved, then there's I can go ahead and give you my bid, and then you win the job and you swap me out. There's no protections here. So these are things you got to look at. You're doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And we all know what that is.
Mr.
And I'll close on that. You have a great evening.
Yeah, Mr. Ford, I want to say that please stay tuned for next month, and we will expect a presentation on the local and small business policy and what the district is doing to implement that and best practices. And that it's not exactly in our purview, but it is, I consider that it is somewhat, because we're interested in where the local taxpayer dollars are being spent. So with that, I will move on to item 8, which is future meetings and when the next one will be. I don't think we need 10 minutes. We just need to decide when the next one will be.
That'll be great. Thank you.
Andrea, I suggest that we establish the next 3 meetings just because in the past we've had fizzled meetings with either they weren't well scheduled or we didn't have a quorum. And so I hate for us to be without a for certain date. So let's just establish right now our next 3 meetings.
Okay, that we can try that.
Okay, so
November.
so let's say, Andrea, whatever fits for you in mid-November,
Well,
whatever fits for you in mid-December and mid-January.
well, the thing is, I would say in November, it would be November 10th.
November 10th works for me.
But does it work for you, Herbert? Because what I really feel like is Kathy's going to have to pull. the-
Yeah, November 10th is just fine. I can do
Okay.
that. You can do it.
All right, and then I would say December 8th, because after the 15th is too late in the month.
December 8th is just fine for me also.
Herbert, Mr. Herbert,
That's fine.
okay. And then in January, let's see, I don't have my January 22 calendar, but it would be like, not,
The 12th.
okay, January 12th, that would be the second.
It would be the second Wednesday of January.
Okay,
Okay,
does that seem reasonable, staff? We will do an outreach with those dates right now.
Okay.
All right,
This is Dave Olson. I'm sorry to interrupt. The January date was when?
The
what I
12th.
12th.
propose is Wednesday, January the 12th.
Thank you.
Okay. So next item is new business. Do we have new?
Chair Dawson, if I might, I do have something I'd like to do during new business.
Sure.
Thank you. I previously sent out an email to the members, and I wanted to again introduce Harriet Scott to you. She is my associate and she will be working side by side with me. There she is, side by side with me, to support this committee. And today she's just listening and getting acclimated, but you may receive communications from either one of us. So I again, like I said, I did send out that notice previously, but I again wanted to introduce her to the group, and it was sent out to the committee members. So those of you who are also participants, but not committee members, would not have known about that.
So Harriet, welcome.
Thank you so much.
And
Uh,
I apologize that I did not introduce.
There was a lot going on at the very beginning.
Acknowledge you.
And
Yeah,
I'm just catching on and listening in. I did want to note the fact that in picking those dates, you all fell into just selecting the second Wednesday of every month. And if that works, then you may want to go forward. That's an easy thing to remember. You might want to see yourselves going forward with that as a date choice, but time will tell.
yeah, it has been pretty good. A year or so ago, it worked. And so, yes, we'll try it.
In the past, we've generally had it the third week of the month, but if the second week of the month is workable. Now, for right now, it's only the 3 of us that are saying that the second week of the month works. And so let's,
That's right.
it's subject to change at our next meeting.
Right. So we will need to poll the committee. Truthfully, we thought we were going to have 4 folks consistently this evening, and that it hasn't happened that way, but we've had a quorum, so that's good.
Oh,
So any other items to be discussed under new business?
I have nothing.
I don't either. What about you, Mr. Herbert?
No.
No? With that, I will say that meeting is adjourned, and you all have a good evening, rest of the evening, and take care.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.